Hi, I'm Connor Winterton of Borrowing Tape, and I'm here today with Seabold Krebs, the writer-director of the new mystery thriller Bury Me When I'm Dead. Thank you for joining us today, Seabold.
Connor, nice to see you or hear you.
um, Before we get into the questions about like the production process, the inspirations for the films, other questions that I've got, could you please tell our listeners or readers about the film? Tell us a little bit about spoiler-free overview of Bury Me When I'm Dead.
Yeah, Bury Me When I'm Dead is a movie about a young man who owns a flower shop with his wife, and she gets a terminal diagnosis and wants a natural burial in the woods near her childhood home, and asks him to bury her there in the woods when she's dead. And as the film goes on, we sort of peel back the layers of a very complicated life of Henry and his side piece and her pregnancy and his wife Catherine's death and her family. So the film's a little bit of a snowball rolling down the hill drama with a lot of psychological elements, and it's a film that I'm extremely proud of and would love to talk to you about it.
Great, thank you for that overview. What were the inspiration? What initially inspired the idea for "Bury Me When I'm Dead"?
I think as a when I start to write and I have an idea for a film that I want to make, inevitably I think about. Usually, I start with the main character. I'm very interested in subjective filmmaking, where we're going to see a story from one person's point of view. The majority of my short films at Columbia University, where I got my MFA, are subjective films. So I start to think about a person and putting that person in a situation. I had written a short story in my undergrad called Cold Rooms, which was a story about a man trapped in a house with the body of his dead wife, um, and the psychological journey of what that would mean of a person being stuck with the body of a loved one over the winter. And that developed into two different versions of a screenplay, and the last one was Bury Me When I'm Dead. I'm very interested in death and grief, and I really, really like Man versus Self as just an overview story structure.
Okay, thank you for that. Were there any particular like filmmakers that inspired you? Any other kind of styles or anything that was an inspiration whilst making "Bury Me When I'm Dead"?
Yeah, Connor, I have sort of unusual tastes, and so I think I tend to. I mean, everybody has their favorites, right? So we have filmmakers that we really like. Um, there's a movie that I really love that a lot of people hate called Wood Shock, with Kirsten Dunst, which is
Yeah.
about it's sort of a tone poem about death and drugs and love, which I really like. And then one of my favorite contemporary filmmakers is Panos Cosmatos, who made some people might know him from Mandy. I remember seeing his first film, Beyond the Black Rainbow, in the movie theater, and just literally it blew my mind. And I love Possession. I watched Possession with our DP, and we talked a lot about the way that that film looks. And then I'm a huge Tarkovsky fan, so I think watching The Sacrifice and the way that that movie unfolds, the way that movie looks, was a huge inspiration. And Jacob's Ladder, which I think is a masterpiece. Um, and so those are the films that I think were swirling around as we were preparing to shoot the film, especially, and as I was writing the film.
That's an interesting mix there, actually. I'm not, yeah, I don't get many people mention Woodstock. I've not watched that in a while, but that was a nice mention there. I also agree with you, Jacob's Ladder being a masterpiece. I think it's fantastic. Possession is an interesting one, actually, because I hadn't. So I love alternative, indie, strange cinema. That's my bag. I love it. And Possession was on my list for ages, and it didn't quite meet my expectations, actually. But Jacob's Ladder did. I thought Jacob's Ladder was excellent. So yeah, thank you for talking about your inspirations there. So let's move on to talk a bit more about like the production process and stuff. Because I know some of our listeners and readers like to know about like behind the scenes, how things are made. So could you tell us a bit about like how it all started, what the production process like? Was it like working with the cast, etc.?
Yeah, the film was developed after I graduated from Columbia. I had written a screenplay called Study in Blue, which was a version of Bury Me When I'm Dead, and it had won a top screenwriting award at Columbia University. Sort of part of the reward that you get, the prize that you get, is doing sort of speed dating with a group of producers. And I had met my producer, Amanda Friedman, through that process. And over the next 2 years, developed the script. The script did change from that version, and casting. I think the first big step was our casting director. So we hired Betsy Fippinger, who was absolutely terrific and hung on to the film through what ended up being 3 years of trying to get the film made, and putting our cast together. So, and obviously Henry is a person that we looked at a lot of people for, and was obviously the most important thing, and then to build the cast around that. So we cast Devin. I really liked Devin's work, but I felt like certainly there was something he could do that was different from what he had done. And I found him to be an especially strong actor who could play the emotions under the surface. A lot of the movie is really about people hiding their emotions and not expressing them. And so that was really important to me. And then casting Charlotte and Mackenzie. Charlotte is, her character is meant to be really the light of the film. She's quite a pure character. And we got the cast together with the cast, and the financing came through. And then we shot for, I think, 19 days in New Jersey. They had just, we were one of the first productions to take advantage of their new production benefits, which at some point was upwards of 40%, I believe, when we shot in rural New Jersey. So we shot for 19 days, and then it was an almost 3 years journey to get the film finished and to get the film sold. So that was quite an arduous time. The last 3 years has been, for me, very taxing. I'm excited about the film and wanted people to see it. And it just came out on the 18th, and I guess it's available in the UK today. I think today is the release date, the 27th of July.
Yes, yeah. So 19 days for an independent film. I was going to say it's quite a short amount of time, I suppose. But then again, it's not totally uncommon to film in that amount of time. Were there any challenges in that period? What were the kind of any particular highlights, or and then on the other hand, any particular challenges that you faced in those 19 days?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be a little bit introspective here, Connor, so bear with me if I get a little philosophical, but every production has challenges. We were shot during COVID. That was a big challenge, which is why all of our behind-the-scenes photos are people in masks. I think that, I personally added some challenges to the production because I had worked in TV and film production for 5 years before I decided to go to school, and because I wanted to be a writer and a director. And I had seen what, very long days does to a production. And so, I asked my producing team, the reason why we even did that number of days, 19 days, which I think we could have done less if we had killed each other, was to keep the hours low. I didn't want to do more than 12 a day. And so we did 12 to 13 hours a day maximum. So I wanted everybody to be well rested. So that was it. I think sort of one of the biggest challenges that we all knew from the development was that this is a very different kind of story that requires a different set of challenges in the writing process primarily. By the time I cast my actors and we had our locations and the normal film production challenges were there, you know, we all are aware. It was really about making sure that as I slowly steered the ship, that I didn't get too scared about what I had written, if that makes sense. Like, I think you start to see dailies, and I think that you can feel very insecure about your own writing, especially as a writer-director, where I'm basically resetting the film on day one and making the best film that we could make while we're there, and balancing sort of the three versions of the story that ultimately the film would be in the writing process, the directing process, and the editing process. I think I've now, having done it on a larger scale, understanding the unique challenges of being that person and balancing, you know, confidence, open-mindedness, and a good amount of delusion. And basically being mentally ill enough to be like, oh, this is going to work. And then I guess at the end of it, feeling like after I'd edited the film, I was like, oh, good. Like that seemed to work.
Is it sometimes that I feel like sometimes you need that like critical distance? So when you're doing it, well, I speak subjectively, and then you can say whether you agree, disagree. Is that like you become more self-critical in the moment, and that as you're doing it, and then when you get a bit of separation from it, I find that actually it's better than I thought, or things that in the moment I thought, oh, actually that didn't worked better. So did that happen,
Yeah.
or yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's certainly part of it. I think for me, the strength is surrounding myself with people that I genuinely trust.
Mm.
That's a huge plus. Like, to me, being a director, you're standing in a circle and you're surrounding yourself with people. So if you fall one way or the other, someone's there to catch you. Um, so I can't be objective. It's impossible. And
Mm.
so when I was editing the film, I brought in somebody that not only did I know from school, Brucey, from Iceland, I loved his philosophy as a human being, and I loved his work as a creative. And so that was those kinds of relationships are what I think prevent somebody from faltering, because I can, in any moment that I feel insecure, I can look over to that person and give them a look and be like, is this a thing or is this not a thing? And I think that can be a pitfall if you surround yourself with people that will just tell you what you want to hear instead of being surrounded by people that will tell you the truth. And I
Yeah.
think that was important to me.
Oh, definitely. That's really important, isn't it? To have people that are like constructively critical, that have your
Yeah,
back, that you can trust in that process.
yeah,
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 definitely.
yeah, and people that believe in the project and are
Mm.
also very very critical about it. So I think that's key, because I think you also have to just be careful about having somebody that's critical because maybe they don't believe in the project. You want somebody that really believes in what you're doing and can be a creative partner. I think that's super important.
Yeah, that shares that passion about it
Yeah,
with you, and therefore they want it to be the best possible film. So their
exactly.
criticism it is shaped by that, basically.
Yeah, because it comes from the right place. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk to us a bit more about the visual language of the film, and any like influences or motivations for the cinematography, or the not just the visual, but like the audio visual design of it.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit older, so I come from the age of, VHS tapes and physical media and noise and grain and imperfection, and so I think it's inescapable for my eyes and my brain, to feel more at home in a place where there's things are messy and noisy. I think that's the starting point. I think stuff is too clear and crisp now. I don't want to watch television when I'm watching a movie. You know what I mean? And I guess when I watch sometimes I see a movie on television. In a television show, I watch Severance. To me, that feels like a movie. So
I'm so glad it's not just me that
yeah,
doesn't like, because I also don't like this really clear, crisp aesthetic.
yeah,
Yeah, bit grainy. You like to see that. I remember when I first watched, which I think is outstanding, but Twin Peaks: The Return, that had that very clear, crisp aesthetic, and I was like, oh no, I kind of wanted it to have the 1990s aesthetic actually.
yeah.
But yeah, so I just thought of that as you were speaking. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think we just a certain generation just feels more at home with a certain aesthetic. So I'll start there again, being an old man and having things that I like. And it will be different, Connor. I mean, newer, younger generations won't maybe have the love for that aesthetic that we do because they're growing up seeing things differently than we do.
Mm.
But having said that, I also think for me as a filmmaker and a storyteller, first you want to look at the story and be like, what does the story require, right? So that this type of story to me required a very specific visual language, right? So for me, I think personal relationships, which the film is largely about internal emotions and the relationships between the characters, not just how unclear they can be, but also how distant they can be. So for me, again, I'm starting from a story place, which is every character in this movie is having an internal life that's separate from their external life. They all are in the orbit of each other, but it doesn't really feel like anybody is connected to one another, right? So this isn't a movie filled with characters who are intimately connected to one another. In fact, the opposite. So for me, noise, abstraction, things being in the way, not necessarily things being crystal clear, not only is a personal interest of mine, but also fits this story specifically. So I worked with Gemma, our cinematographer, to sort of build that visual language, which was things always in the way. There's a lot of stuff in front of the camera to create sort of visual, unusual artifacts and stuff. We used a panaflare, which was a thing that I thought was used, that Panos Cosmatos uses a lot that I love, which is a light near the barrel of the lens that pushes sort of a milky color wash. So basically all the effects that you see in the film were all done mostly on set. Any of the color aberrations, we added a little bit of film grain, but we also had higher ISOs to boost the noise in the picture. And then being very intimate. I think, again, we're spending 90 minutes with characters that are not always outwardly with their emotions, and so I felt like the camera should be slightly closer than normally maybe it should be, because I think we want to watch to get any bit of information we can from the performances. And so all that stuff, I think, shaped the visuals of the film.
Okay, thank you very much for your introspection so far and telling us about the production process, the visual design, etc. My penultimate question is then kind of flipping it to your motivations around what kind of response you'd like from the audience. Like, what kind of emotional or psychological response did you hope to provoke in audiences whilst watching the film?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do myself a lot of favors, Cotter, if I'm being 100% honest here, which is, I think the things that interest me in the film definitely build barriers for the audience that they have to overcome for them to fully appreciate the film. So I certainly didn't think, how can I let as many people into this movie as possible? Which I think is pretty clear in a lot of the critical reviews, which is I have a passive protagonist, I have a bad to worse story structure that requires a full 90 minutes to understand. And then I have an unusual visual language and unusual performances. So straight out of the gate, I think that I've put some distance, a lot of barriers between the audience and the film that I made, which I'll fully acknowledge, and which was purposeful, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the movies that affect me are movies that I, one, want to pay attention to stimulate my brain. You know, I feel like I am an emotional person because I'm a human being, but the things that I find interesting are I like puzzles and stuff that makes me think. And so I think I've constructed a film that for me feels very intellectually satisfying. And then as an intellectual exercise, sometimes I watch a movie to laugh. Sometimes I watch a movie to feel an emotion. Sometimes I watch a movie just to have something on in the background. So I also think that not every movie is meant for every person in every situation. This movie is not for everybody. I hope that there are people that will watch it, and I believe that there will be people that watch it that, one, really connect with the film as a work of art, and walk away feeling that the themes in the film maybe hit, maybe afterwards, even after they've seen the film. I think that if you're watching the movie and you're expecting sort of the traditional sort of three-act structure, or you're looking for people to repeat lines twice because you're on your phone and you miss it the first time. If you're watching the film because you want things to be super clear and you don't have to really try to understand and put the pieces of the emotional puzzle together, then this film may not be for you. If you enjoy that thing, then I think this film is for some people. And I think some people have really left the film feeling like, one, it's a bummer. And it feels like some people are going to walk away from the film feeling not great because the film is a bad to worse structure where there is an inevitable ending, and you're not going to walk away on feeling, on cloud nine. And I think, if there are enough people that can walk away from the movie feeling like I've watched a good movie and it's made me think and it's made me feel some things, I think that's a win.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for your honesty there as well. I appreciate that. Are you currently working on any other projects? My final question, anything coming up? Anything to expect from you maybe in the next year or two? Any projects?
I am desperate to make another screenplay that I wrote at Columbia called New Hampshire Boy, which is an autobiographical story about a bisexual homeless punk rocker in Boston in the early 2000s. That I think is really exciting, and I love this script. It's a tough sell because it's again, it's another like very unusual structure with certain characters that we don't see in movies very often. But boy, I'd love to do that, and I have a couple other screenplays in the genre space that I would love to make. And we are very lucky to get to make anything. 99% of films never get made. There's 100 great ideas, and one of them actually gets made into a movie. So I'm very grateful that I've put something over the finish line. And if I'm lucky and I work hard, maybe I'll get to make something else, and I think that would make me very happy.
What was the title again? Was it New Hampshire
New
Boy?
Hampshire Boy
I like
was
the
the
sound of
title.
that. I think that sounds very interesting. So fingers crossed for you with that project. It sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us today, Seabold. We appreciate your time.
Connor, thank you so much for having me. And by the way, I love the podcast. I have listened to the podcast.
Oh, good.
Uh, yeah, you did an episode with Tomas about Chronicles of the Wandering Saint. Not you, but one of your cohorts.
Yes.
And then I listened to that one, and then somebody had also interviewed Siam Sadiq for his movie Joyland, who was a
Hmm.
classmate of mine at Columbia. So I'm a
Oh,
big,
cool.
big fan of the podcast also.
Oh, fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks, Connor.